desk. I said, you should ask Robert what my desk looks like, because I've got it all like stacked out, like by day. I haven't like put it all in the folders in it.
Librarian.
Yeah, it's kind of a big, like they're piled by day, but there's like UFF,
Organized chaos.
GAU, yeah. This is a grievance, like whatever. I just have to go through it and put it all in file folders.
I think we're ready.
Yeah, we're ready.
Okay, so, and you, okay, great. I'm gonna send you the email. We've got four proposals and then one that we'd kind of like to talk about, because I think we have a fifth one we could say yes to, but it's dependent on 28, so.
Okay.
Should have those internally. And some of them are, I mean, we're so close on some of them that,
Right.
I think we're pretty good. Some of them are obviously. Let's start with number 8.
This one.
Oh, is it?
Is it?
Yeah, it is. No, you're right.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
Thanks. Let me know when you've got the,
Still
it
waiting.
always takes an extra however long. So I mean, it should be, everything should be the same. We've already talked about the changes in 8.1. We've talked about 8.3. We've talked about the stuff in 8.4. I think we beat that up pretty good. The one change that we were holding out on, I believe, was down in 8.5. We had been pausing because we thought maybe there was another category that we wanted to kind of explore. But we were able to do it with just the simple words, and we talked about this last time. We have been sort of in practice using this leave for internships, which are not technically interpreted as research. And, you know, we heard from you, clarification would be better. So we just explicitly sort of identified it as internship. So,
Okay.
I mean, I think the rest of it is stuff we've all kind of beat up and hammered out, I think. But, you know, I think we're really close on this one.
Mhm.
So I know that, I know we've been in conversations probably on a weekly basis of people with questions about leave. When are we gonna get the leave thing handled? Especially the summer's coming, like the leave question is swirling, because if you remember all the way back, we had agreed it was the first things we were gonna tackle. So we've been talking about it now probably since like early October, and even before then, we knew that we had kind of maybe overstepped with regard to inadvertently removing the unpaid leave category, so.
Mhm.
Hopefully, we're really close on that. I know that everybody will be anxious to get that one hammered out, so.
Wait, can people see my screen?
Yeah, because you have the window here.
The leaves of absence aren't. filled.
Yes, got the windows right in front of you, so you're not gonna see it up there.
Okay, so first of all, so essentially you're saying the main change is here in 8.5.
I believe so.
Okay,
I believe.
Yeah, everything looks, I think.
I think,
that's
fine.
I mean, Jacob, do you want to weigh in on this? I think you're the one who has probably most to say about it, so.
Yeah, that appears to me like it's exactly what we talked about. I think that will benefit people. I think that's good.
Yeah, I think there's a clear mutual interest in, I mean, the internships that are curricularly related to their program, I mean, I think that the grad assistants and the university are both equally served to have that being a recognized important part of what's going on.
Yeah,
So,
100%.
Okay, so, I mean, there's one more thing I think I wanted to discuss.
Okay.
And, I think you met with our grievance team yesterday, right? And I think they may have brought up something that happened to one of the GAs, to our GAs, which is, you know, I think their family member died and,
oh yeah, they
wanted
had
to
talked
take-
about
yeah,
bereavement, yeah.
right.
Mm.
And of course, I mean, it did not really occur to me that, of course, death does not count as a serious health condition, but,
Yeah,
yeah, I mean, I think that, you know, I think it is, yes, I mean, and FMLA and the faculty contract, which is basically what we've been kind of basing our proposals off of. Yeah, bereavement is not.
it's not
directly
contemplated,
included,
yeah.
yes. Of course, in the faculty get, kind of accrued paid time off, right? And so for them, it's not probably something that is very important to bargain for directly.
Right.
But yeah, I think it is something that we might have to consider in our next proposal.
Yeah,
And I know the issue that you had raised with them, which is that you think that there may be room for exploitation of that sort of
Without it being
provision.
properly defined.
Sure.
Not that it would be everybody. And there is a reference to it in line 7.
Mhm.
It's just not fleshed out as a specific type of leave. It's not like, here is a bereavement leave provision.
Right.
Is this the right version? I thought we agreed to change it to sibling. Do we change it back to sister, brother?
Yeah, actually, that is something.
Oh, no, you're right. It should be, no,
Yeah.
we had agreed to take the change to sibling. I'm sorry.
Yeah,
That's my
okay.
fault. No, we had
I-
agreed to that.
Because I noticed you had spouse in there, I'm like, why?
No,
would
no,
you have- Yeah.
No, we had agreed. We had already agreed to that. I apologize. No, go ahead and, I'll resend you it correct, but no, we had already agreed to that change.
Yeah.
I don't know why it didn't. I don't know why.
Right.
Maybe we verbally agreed to it and I didn't click it on the thing at the time, but yeah, no, we're fine with sibling.
Right. Okay.
But yeah, I mean, we could talk about that in greater detail. So, I mean, I think it would be, like, if you guys want to come back, if you want to look at some choices, or if you want to, we're happy to talk about it now, like, give us an idea of like what
Yeah,
you're
sure.
thinking. They had, at least went in my conversations with your grievance team yesterday, they were like, well, we can use the 5 days, but we don't really think that's necessarily enough.
Right.
We talked about a couple different things. They're like, what if it's an international student? They have to travel and it takes a long time.
Right.
And I think practically speaking, and I'd invite Robert to weigh in, I think that there's been sort of reasonable, practical practice,
Workarounds, yeah.
not workarounds necessarily, but I think that the departments and individual units have sort of taken that into consideration,
Mhm.
just like they did with the unpaid leave status.
Right.
I'm not aware of any cases where someone was told, yeah, I'm sorry that your parent
back to
died or
work
something,
tomorrow.
but I'm not gonna let you you can't be off. So I think there's been sort of,
Right.
again, this is not, I don't have scientific data to prove it. I just think that that's
Right.
because it hasn't come forward as a problem necessarily.
Right. Yeah.
I think
haven't
it's
heard-
probably being
Yeah.
effectively handled, but it's
Right.
not necessarily in
Yeah.
perfect harmony with the way this is written.
Yeah, that makes sense. I mean, for verifying, I guess, a family member death, like what? I mean, is there like a normal way that's done in the way? Like, do they ask for certain things? Cause I mean,
Yeah.
cause you said the concern brought up is people just saying, you have a death in the family and then just taking time off when they may not have it.
I'm not aware,
Yeah, that's what
asking for a death certificate.
yeah, I
Yeah.
know, I figured that.
Yeah.
So I just didn't know, but
There
yeah.
may become a time when, if someone's
Mm.
father dies 4 times, then they may question,
Well, of course, but, okay,
but
Yeah,
I
I
mean-
mean, I think even with the other stuff, like there is potential. for-
yeah, I mean,
Oh,
like
okay,
a
no,
medical,
yeah.
I would say a health,
100%.
yeah, a health condition too, so I think just like under 8.3A, just adding. Cause we already have the serious or a health condition of an immediate family member, just add, death of a immediate family member as well.
So I think that the difference is that I'm not sure that even in most regular cases, 8 weeks would be reasonable for bereavement.
Mhm.
Like, I think it's probably different. I mean,
it's 2
again,
days.
Yeah, I'm looking at our bills.
yeah, I
for
believe
stuff that-
teams get 5 days.
Two.
It's
Two.
2 days.
2 days, but then you can use sick leave.
Yeah, but then you can use sick leave.
And then it just says that departments may require employees to submit a copy of the death certificate or other appropriate documentation. So it's not a requirement.
Right,
that they
it's okay.
could.
Right, but from my understanding, at least for 8.3A, they don't have to take the entire 8 weeks for one thing, right? They-
Right.
Okay.
And also,
Yeah.
we don't have other leave that we can like.
Right, we
take.
don't have a
Understandable.
tiered PTO, so yeah.
Understandable.
yeah.
Okay, so just verbally, obviously you didn't give it, but what you're saying is you would like us to consider including
Death.
death of
Yeah, for
of the
8.3.
same parameters contemplated maybe in 8.1 for the purposes of that. That's what
Right.
you're kind of asking if we would consider.
Yeah,
Let us have a chat.
immediate family, yeah.
Yeah, let's have a chat about that. Cause I think
Yeah.
one of the things, again, yesterday while we were sort of chatting through it,
Mm,
is we were contemplating situations in which there's a big difference between, like if you have a parent and you're also the executor of the estate. And they live in
Right.
California,
And you need to take all that time. yeah.
that's different than. Your grandparent died, you're not the executor of the state, they live locally and it was expected. Like, there's a huge difference in continuum of what an
Right.
employee may ask for.
Mhm.
So I think we
Right.
would just want to be clear of what parameters can we actually reasonably put around it so that we're clear on what are we actually agreeing to offer? You know, I think that's one of the things. We would just want to make it
Right.
explicit.
I mean, I think that, I mean, if you're offering it for all these other conditions, I mean, I feel that it should be on like, on that, to your point, it should just be like a case by case basis for doing that. I don't really. I mean, are you thinking about actually putting restrictions in here, like trying to put that spectrum like in writing?
So
Like-
I think that one of the things that one of the things that we will probably talk about, and like I said, we haven't had a chance to talk
Right.
about it at all, is, you know, whether or not did the policy say, was it paid or unpaid, Olivia?
I think it's considered administrative leave, and so you get it,
Yeah,
it's
yeah.
paid.
Gotcha.
Yeah, and that's why it's only 2 days.
Understand?
Right.
Okay. Yeah, let's chew on that a little bit,
Alright.
and we'll,
Yeah.
and we'll take that into consideration. But how about in terms of everything else, the bereavement thing
Yeah,
notwithstanding,
yeah,
you
we're on the
guys,
same page,
we're
yeah.
good on everything else?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So we'll take some time to sort of chat about that.
Mm.
Because
Okay.
honestly, that's just not something we'd even talked about until now.
I know, yeah.
It didn't even
It
cross our
occurred,
mind.
yeah, yeah.
But I was just thinking about it, I think I'd be pretty pissed off with that.
Yeah,
that
if I had a
happened.
immediate
Yeah,
family member died and I couldn't get any
Right.
PTO for that, yeah.
And like I said, I think practically, I think it's probably being handled at the individual departments
I
and
mean,
units.
yeah, I mean, we
without it-
assume professors have a heart.
Well, and again, like I said, I think it would have presented in individual cases by
Right.
now, but it
Yeah.
hasn't, which leads me to believe, I can't imagine people don't have family members passing
Right.
away, which
Right.
is sad, but it's also a reality.
Right.
And the fact that if you have like, we don't have Bob or Melissa or Susan or whomever that said, hey, I had this awful thing, it just leads me to believe that probably people are handling it, but it would be
Yeah.
good to probably have something written.
Yeah.
Okay, let's move on to, so 3 and 16 are gonna be pretty straightforward. I don't think you're necessarily gonna be surprised at what you see. There's not a lot of change in our position that you saw previously, but I wanna go ahead and we've had a lot of conversation about it, and we're gonna go ahead and put it back across the table. So with respect to 3, which we've been chewing on for a long time, basically 3.1A, we're just not interested in contractually obligating the president to have to meet with you guys by contract. It's just not something we're interested in agreeing to. So, I mean, we don't really have a whole lot of more detail or discussion about it, other than it's just not something that we're interested in agreeing to.
So, I mean, I think, I guess it's been a long time since we talked about this.
It
We
is.
Might as well rehash the same points because.
Okay.
I mean, the phrase "the president shall meet with UFF GAU representatives" is already in the contract, right?
Or
And,
President or designate.
or designate, yes.
Right.
But the word president is also in there.
Mm-hmm.
So unless there is a situation in which the president might meet with us, that's just there for show. Like that means nothing.
I would
right?
argue that contractually, and I would defer to Olivia, the word or designee typically reserves the management's ability to assign someone other than the chief executive officer in any given provision. You guys wouldn't pick the designee. The designee would be designated by the president.
Mhm.
No,
I
I know,
mean,
I know, I know that, we
too.
wouldn't too.
No, the point is that if we wanna meet with the president, you
Mhm.
could always just have a designee meet with us and we can never actually according to the contract, we would never meet with the president, even though.
That's
yeah.
100% correct.
It's at his,
And
it's at his discretion,
Right.
president's discretion,
Right, and so.
to either meet or designate somebody.
Right, so I mean, that's why we're saying that the purpose of this, the provision that we'd added was so that there would be a circle.
Right, I mean, and
Right,
we're fine with meeting
Yeah.
with we're not saying we wanna meet with the president anytime we want.
Yeah,
It's at
like,
least
hey,
once.
my lunch. sucked
You know,
today,
after that,
can I
if there's
meet
any
with
other
the
issues, that's fine, but I mean, is there like reason behind it, you're just not interested in this? Like, you just, like, I'm just not sure, like,
Yeah, we just don't think it's just basically, it's not in our interest to do. I think we're not convinced it would actually be to either of our interests for that to happen. I mean, I understand that you want to do it.
Mm.
I'm not sure it would be, like I said, I mean, we could go back and forth. There's not really a whole lot new that we haven't talked about. I think we understand the position of GAU on this.
Mm.
We just aren't interested in agreeing to it.
okay.
I mean, why do you feel that it would not be of any interest to either party?
Well, I don't think quite frankly, I don't think it's gone poorly. I don't think you guys have had, again, giving you guys access to the president or designee is not something you've been denied.
Right,
I would think it's actually been, the amount of time you've had access to an administrative designee has dramatically increased over the last year and a half, quite frankly. So, again, I think the university's position is that you guys are getting a reasonable amount of access to hear into your concerns and to have them addressed by the university.
I think I agree with that. I mean, and again, it makes sense to meet with the designee to deal with things like grievances
Mhm.
or, just day-to-day, things that happen.
Right.
That the union is involved in, but, I think and we did try to kind of address this with our language is that, I mean, that this meeting would occur to discuss kind of high level.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah, and there's been,
concern,
You've
like,
worked
yeah,
hard.
right.
I will acknowledge, you
Yeah.
guys have worked hard to try to assuage some of the concerns you thought we had. I'm
Right.
not saying you haven't tried.
of course.
But
Yeah.
it's just not, it's just not something, even with the modifications, which I acknowledge, it's just not something we're interested in agreeing to.
Okay.
All right, so let's move on to 16. Which again is gonna be something similar, that in terms of the position that you're gonna see from the university is not really any markedly different than what you saw the last time we brought it, which was probably 5 weeks ago, I think. And that is, at this point, we are not interested in any continuation of the release time program. And, similarly to being uninterested in the parking passes, we're also not interested in a designated parking space. And quite frankly, I don't have a lot of new detail. I mean, I know this is something we've already talked about. It's relatively well trod ground. Other than, again, we no longer think it's in our interest to provide release time to the union. And the parking spot is, again, just something we're not interested in doing.
So, I mean, I'll just say this right now, like, I don't see us agreeing to any kind of thing where the release
Yeah,
time is not there.
I mean, it's already
Yeah.
CCL, I don't,
It,
Right.
yeah, and, I mean, I will discuss it in greater detail when we present the, counter proposal.
Okay.
But I mean, this kind of provision is very standard in lots of union
Yeah.
contracts, and it's because it also helps the employer.
I don't think we've
Yeah.
ever found a
Um,
contract that didn't have a release time provision.
Oh, yeah, I actually finished that research. Not one educator union in Florida
You mean higher ed?
or, let me double check my notes. Certainly higher ed, absolutely. And it's been in our contract since we first got bargaining rights.
That's
And I also have not heard you explain like what has changed
Yeah.
this year that
Exactly.
made you different than any other higher education institution and specific to GAs, not faculty here. No longer is release time mutually beneficial in that one special case of the only high ed union in Florida where it's no longer mutually beneficial.
And why now, not like a year ago?
understandable.
Well, I'm asking that again because I'm saying I never heard that. What?
Yeah, no, I
what is-
understand your question, and all I'm telling you that comprehensively and holistically, we just no longer think it's in our best interest.
Why not? I mean, why did you think it was in your interest before? And
We didn't bargain it
I
before.
didn't, I wasn't here to bargain the contract when it
No,
originally
but the
started.
university,
None of us were with the university before, so. we
Yeah,
can't
yeah,
talk to
I
that.
wasn't there when the provision was bargained. I don't
You
know.
are the university's representative though, and
But I'm not responsible for representing what was represented in a previous bargaining session. I can tell you our position now. I don't know what the position was in 2006 or 2008 when it was originally struck. I don't know.
okay, there are people here who were here 3 years ago when the last time the contract was negotiated.
Oh, yeah.
And that provision was still in there.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I'm talking about when it was, he said from the beginning, which I'll acknowledge. I acknowledge
Yeah,
that it's
but
been there
I'm
since
saying
the beginning.
what's changed from 3 years ago?
Well, from 3 years ago, we didn't strategically think it was something that we would either remove or wanted to remove from the contract.
Why not?
Why did we not want to remove it at
Yeah, I
that
mean,
point?
like, why is it
I
that
don't know.
you wanted it at that time and you don't want it now, like?
So
3
just
years later?
because I will say, just because we don't try to take something out of the contract in a given contract cycle, doesn't mean that we like that it's in there. There are all types of
So what do
provisions
you
you have to,
dislike about it being? Let's go there.
we don't believe that the university and management is served. We don't believe it's a mutual interest. We think it is a GAU only interest.
Why is that?
I think on its face, you can understand why. I don't think there's a whole lot of detail that is necessarily needed. We are not interested in providing release time for grad assistants to engage in working for the union that we pay for. We're no longer interested in that provision.
You understand that we're
you-
all volunteers that you're speaking with right now. So does
I don't
the
see that's material. I mean, I understand.
so does the university sometimes need to interface with the union and cannot just like insist that some GA voluntarily steps into that role and helps you interface with the union?
When you say volunteers, so you are all on release time right now, right?
No, none of
No,
us. There's not a
certainly
single
not.
person in leadership who's on release.
Well, but isn't that the point
No,
of
it is not. The
Well, then
point of
can you
it, yeah.
explain, because my understanding of release time is that it is so that you all, because you're taking a lot of time to meet with us and so that you get released from your GA position so that you can focus on doing this.
You're mistaken. I
Well,
mean,
then what
it's
is
never
it?
been like that since I've been.
Well,
here.
but can you, I guess, help me explain then how you understand release time?
That is separate from the question of we are volunteers, and you're saying that you assumed we were release time for the purpose of taking time and meeting with you all and doing this mandatory thing. That's exactly what we're trying to say.
What
That
I'm trying to
if
clarify is
you
my
meet-
understanding. I asked a question based on my understanding of what release time
Yeah.
is.
can I
And now,
answer that?
can you, yeah, and I'm just trying to understand because apparently my understanding was wrong.
Yeah.
But
So I'm trying to get an answer
Jacob,
from
let me take this one.
how
that cool?
it works, how you all are using release time.
Yeah, so it essentially it's to when there's issues like grievances and when there are kind of someone needs a union rep to be at a certain place, you know, for any kind of employment related conversation with the supervisor. Those are the kinds of things like even just like in the background, like kind of taking
Administrative
care of,
tasks.
yeah, clerical
So
stuff,
like, yeah.
also related to grievances and
Mhm.
stuff like that. It is really just like the kind of really boring bureaucratic stuff that is necessary to run the union.
Yes.
And a lot of that bureaucratic stuff has to do with how we with our interface with the university itself. Since I've been here, it's been very exceedingly rare for someone in leadership to be taking a release.
But you could if you wanted to.
You could,
I'm
and
sorry, Rachel, Sikander, Rachel was appointed release
I
time.
remember that. I remember
Yeah,
that. Yeah.
and prior to that, who was he? Like, I'll have to
Rachel.
go back and I can look, I think Amber has all those appointments of release time. It wasn't, in my knowledge of doing this.
Yeah, Rachel
My
was the
impression
only
was
person
they
who
were
I could
bargainers
think of.
as well.
Yeah, Rachel was the only person who I could think of off the top of my head who's had a release time
Okay,
position.
so you could have release time.
Oh,
You
yeah,
just have
we
chosen
could,
not to.
yeah,
Okay,
yeah.
But that's, I mean,
But I will just say that
Okay.
it's never been the practice for that,
Okay.
for
Right.
what you are describing.
Yeah.
what
Like,
I'm
like,
describing,
which is that,
which is
oh,
that somebody on the bargaining team could use release time.
well, as in, yeah, to
Okay.
somewhat, yeah, exactly, something like that, but it's not, it doesn't happen.
But I'm not faulting you for it. I'm just saying my understanding of release time is that somebody who does work for the union can use release time.
No,
But
I mean,
why
actually,
you're disagreeing?
it's pretty
I mean, Rachel-
explicitly, there are certain types of activities that are
Rachel was
explicitly
sitting
prohibited.
across this table from us a year ago and she was on release time.
I remember that, yeah.
So
Not all work that
when am
not
I
all work that is
misunderstanding?
done
I
is
mean,
actually beneficial, but
yeah, so
release
like,
time
let's say, for
exists.
example, when Rachel was on release time, she was getting paid to do the types of things like meeting with Patrick,
Okay.
meeting with people who have grievances. She was not getting paid to do what like the job of the co-president is. Similarly, if I was on release time, I would be doing all those bureaucratic tasks. That's what my 20 or 13 hours would
Okay.
be going towards.
Right.
It wouldn't be going towards me doing my jobs as bargaining chair, which I do as a volunteer.
Okay, so we're on the same page. We understand. It's just that Sometimes people on the bargaining team use release time and sometimes they don't. Sometimes the co-president uses it and sometimes they don't. That's all I'm saying. I just, when,
Okay.
that's,
But that thing that you said was in a tangent away from the question I said, which is the university needs to interface with the union. It is in the university's interest to interface with the union. And the people you're talking to now, everyone other than our release time people are strictly volunteers. So the university can't say, hey, random GA that happens to volunteer for the union, come like do this administrative task for me. That's why release time is mutually beneficial. There's somebody there in GAU for the university to interface with, who is not just doing that out of the kindness of their heart as a volunteer for GAU, not for the university.
what administrative task are we asking the union to do for us?
Anytime that we have to interface with you about grievances, about other employment related matters, there has to be someone from the union who is there, who is either,
Grievance committee now is on release time?
sorry?
The grievance committee that Patrick meets with is on release? time?
I'm not, I don't think so.
Neither of them
Yeah,
are.
Yeah.
Not necessarily, but the release time worker we have now does help facilitate the grievance process. And we don't have to like guess at what release time does. It's right there on the screen for the purpose of carrying out the obligations in representing employees subject to the following conditions. So there's obligations that GAU has to do in as far as representing employees. And when UF needs to like interface with the representative of the employees, like for the same reason you're the representative of the board of trustees, right? So they pay you so that there's a person for this mandatory type of interfacing that's happening right now. It's in the board of trustees' interest to pay for a representative to be there so that the mandatory thing gets carried out.
Okay, so what is the mandatory thing that GAU is doing
So
that they have to do? Other than, I mean, bargaining, obviously.
all of these administrative tasks that we keep talking about,
We're not requiring you to administer the union in any sort of way. We're not allowed to do that. So, and it's your choice and it's the member's choice, whether or not they want to have a grievance.
Your
member.
contract enforcement
representative.
has to interface with
It's
the
the
union.
member's decision about whether they want to have a grievance representative at like a grievance hearing, I think.
the university has obligations as
That's
far
fine.
as interfacing with the union, because the union has become a representative of the employees,
The person who's
Let's
representing the
let's listen to what he has to say.
the
because
person
the
who's representing
university,
the grievance.
Just let him
Okay.
finish.
it's,
All right. Okay, finish
let him
talking
finish
and then
with
we're
you.
gonna move on.
Go ahead, Jacob.
the university is obligated to interface with GAU because we are a representative. We were elected, we have a unit that we represent, and university through the contract has obligations to interface with those employees through a representative.
And that representative is on release time.
That release time is mutually beneficial because UF needs a person who they can like interface with that is not just a random GA who happens to volunteer to help UF meet that obligation that they have.
But that only if, so then who, tell me the name of that person, who that mandatory person is right now, and then is that person on release time?
Why would we explain who we hire as release time and whether they are like,
I want to understand the example of who the mandatory person is.
Yeah, that's what we're trying to, what is the
What is the mandatory?
you
position?
know who is the release time person, you approve them.
I don't.
Yeah, it's.
I'm trying to
I could
understand your
look it up.
position,
I know it goes
but-
through.
We're
I
just
think
gonna
it
go
goes-
ahead and move on. It's mutually beneficial to every single higher ed, every single GA union, every single faculty union, including the faculty union that the same team bargains with here. You recognize that it's there. It's just so obviously like, I don't know. Let's move on. I'm repeating myself.
All right.
Did you, about the parking space, did you talk with like TAPS or anything about like getting us like the parking space, or you
I
just
I
not
didn't talk,
interested
I
in-
didn't talk with one of the directors.
Okay.
What I did is I went and looked at the stuff, you guys had submitted some
Right.
parking spaces and whatever. I wasn't able to find any external organizations. I only found internal organizations.
Okay.
So, I mean, if you have information that there's external organizations, if you would give me those names, I'd be happy to find them, but I wasn't able to identify any external organizations that got dedicated. I know you're a related organization, but you're technically an external one, so.
So is the rec center not external? Because I think in the slideshow I showed there was tons of ones for the rec center.
Rec centers,
Presumably-
that's internal,
True.
that's all, those are all employees. All right, so move on to Article 9.
Well, actually, really quick, so does any external group have an office anywhere? Because
I
the contract gives us an office.
Yeah, I
Um,
didn't.
We're
check that.
just not legally allowed to park near our office.
I didn't actually do any research on that because we weren't contemplating. I mean, that's CCL that you guys have that. So I didn't do any research on offices. I can do that if you want me to. I'm happy to
Do
do
you,
it.
do you see the absurdity of granting an office but making it illegal to park anywhere near that office, though?
It's not illegal. It's not
Well,
illegal. There's a whole parking lot in the O'Connell Center where you can park.
We cannot park it in the Econo Center during the day.
Or in the parking garage
There's-
7, there's screen parking. It's not in the parking lots, but actually in the garage. That's the closest, I think.
On the
So-
one hall.
Oh, it's 2 pages.
That is not near in terms of like moving like stuff out of an office to a car back and forth. Like we have a lot of heavy materials that we need to transport. So do you see, can you at least acknowledge the absurdity of like not legally
I'm
being?
not I'm not
Acknowledge-
acknowledging any absurdity because I don't.
Especially
believe it's
because
absurd.
you guys are, I mean, well, yeah, I don't see anything absurd here.
Yeah.
You don't see absurdity in not being allowed to park anywhere near your office.
So Article 9,
Yeah, let's move on to Article 9. So I think what we've attempted to do in Article 9 is you guys had several specific components. Let's go back through 9.1. The university and UFFGA, you recognize that internal and external forces may seek at times to restrict academic freedom, and both parties shall maintain, encourage, protect, and promote employees' academic freedom. Consistent with this agreement, all relevant regulations and state and federal statutes. So I think we're okay with that rewording. The next one is gonna be down in 9.2. We've gone back and forth on 9.2B. We have again stricken 9.2B, but we've added a 9.4, which we believe it doesn't exactly replicate, but approximates what we think you were driving at in 9.2B. So let's look at that. Similarly, with the second half of 9.3A, we think with the inclusion of the academic freedom definition in 9.4, 9.3, that second part becomes redundant. So let's take a look at our proposal for the new 9.4, which provides basically a description of academic freedom. Consistent with the exercise of academic responsibility described in section 9.5 and 9.6 below, which are the two sections that we've added and worked on. A GA shall be free to discuss all relevant matters in the classroom, to explore all avenues of scholarship, research, and creative expression consistent with their appointment, and to speak freely on all matters of university governance, and to speak, write, or act in an atmosphere of freedom and confidence. We feel that that's it. Well, and I know that some of the specific phrases that I feel were particularly interesting to GA or that they were interested in were things specifically with respect to, we want to be able to engage in political discussion. Again, you could see the phrase that you all had in 9.2B, freely express their political beliefs and or affiliations. And I think we are more comfortable in a more broad sense that ties the discussion to being relevant to the classroom, as opposed to, it seemed to us that what you were looking for is an opportunity to occasionally go pretty far afield, as long as it wasn't consistent, because you were like, well, as long as it's not redundant, it's okay if we are kind of veering off sort of into the hinterlands on occasion, if it doesn't meet the standard for what you guys had defined as persistent. And I think that, you know, we are willing to acknowledge that that you all have a right of being protected in terms of academic freedom, but not engaging in things that are irrelevant, even on a persistent basis. We're not comfortable with that type of description. So again, 9.4 is our attempt to respond to what we think you were interested in 9.2 without giving this sort of litmus test for discussing things that were irrelevant. I think that if you look down at 9.5, and it did the numbering thing where 9.5 the second 9.5 should be 9.6. Previously, the 3, we think there was a mistake in that. The only thing that wasn't stricken was University Regulation 1.008. We're okay with, you guys did not like 9.53. We're okay with removing 9.53. Your last proposal had suggested striking that section. We're okay with that. Down in 9.5, 9.51, it's got this weird sort of indent. The blue section, which is in lines 91 through 95, we are not interested in that,
Wait,
in that language there, which is,
no, I just moved that.
where did it go to?
A,
Okay,
Oh, sorry. Oh, yeah, that's right.
so I think we accepted the language in lines 84 and 84 through 86. Right, that was.
Yes, no, that was fine. Yeah, we're okay with that part.
And then what my suggestion was to move that language, and that was in lines 92 to
Yeah, we changed it.
94, to move it to the
Right.
next section, which was already talking about discipline.
Right.
So
But
the other section already said that you couldn't be disciplined for taking reasonable action in self-defense or defense of others.
right. And
So I just moved that, so it's like, there's like one line that says you can't be disciplined for essentially taking appropriate action to prohibit disruptive behavior or for taking reasonable action in self-defense, so that's
Right.
all.
But
together.
the key difference is it's exchanging a standard of appropriateness with a standard of reasonability. I mean, I think substantively, that's one of the biggest important things. And then the 9.6, which we acknowledge, you pulled from the AAUP on extramural utterances, which I still think is an interesting phrase. We're just not interested in, we're not interested in that language. We think that the definition that we've offered in 9.4 is comprehensive enough that you don't, contemplating fitness to serve and, you know, going through the GA's record as a teacher and scholar and, again, the references to engaging in political activities, we're not interested in going that far. We think that the definition in 9.4 covers the interest of the GAs in that respect.
But they're not the same thing. They're not about the same thing.
No, they're not the same thing. I'm not so sure that we want to get into, quite frankly, the tests of, because what we're really talking about is where, and again, I'm gonna sort of defer to Olivia so I don't get my terms wrong. But we're not really interested in contemplating the intersection of where, you know, First Amendment and employment sort of engage, like, we're not really interested in contemplating some of those nexus in the contract with the AAUP standard, which you suggested. That I do.
Yeah, that's fair. And then, I mean, 9.1 also has just the general description of
Yeah.
academic freedom as well, so.
Okay, I mean, I don't have really much to say about this other than, I mean, essentially what I'm getting here is, all of your proposals are striking out all our language and saying you're not interested in hearing.
I don't think that's
So-
true. I mean, in
Yeah.
Article 9, Sikander, we took a lot, several of your suggestions. We didn't take all of them, but we took.
I'm not just talking about Article 9. I'm
Oh, okay.
I mean, there's been a string of counter proposals which are like this.
Yes,
Yeah, and he
So
said
I
that,
will,
you'd hear that today,
Yeah.
so.
sorry.
He
I was-
prepped you for that, he was upfront when we
I was-
started.
No, no,
he said you're gonna hear this.
that's fine. I mean, I think we will also have to, you know, in light of that, consider how, you know, we, propose our,
sure.
That's fair. I
Yeah,
mean, we
that's
are
fair.
getting to the point in bargaining now. We've been back and forth on some of these. Where at some point, we're gonna get to a point where we've reached the point where
We've both gone as far
we've
as
gone
we
as far as we're willing to go.
Yeah.
And then we need time to think about it or consider it in the broader scope of the
Mhm.
CBA.
yeah.
So don't take it as being anything negative. It's just that sometimes there's a position we take that,
No, I
it
mean.
doesn't matter what we're
I'm
gonna
just-
say, you're not gonna like what we have to say, so.
Yeah, I'm telling you like, not like in a emotional way or anything. I'm just telling you straight up, like,
Yeah.
that's what I've noticed.
That's-
And so
that's fair.
that's how we're gonna have to proceed.
That's
from
fair.
our perspective.
And as
So-
as we get deeper into like the low hanging fruit has effectively been picked.
Sure.
I
Yeah,
mean, so.
Mhm.
that's right.
I have-
Yeah,
Yeah, I have a few questions.
ahead.
Sure.
So I remember there was some discussion, I just wanna double check.
Yeah.
About DAs being able to request a student to leave the classroom.
Mhm. Yeah.
Like, is that, like, in that language, and then if the student doesn't comply, like, what would kind of be? Like, cause I know there was one thing where we want the DAs to be able to remove students from the classroom in that moment. Is that like where
Yeah, so.
that gives them the power to remove them, and
Oh,
if they
yeah.
don't
Yeah.
leave, they?
Oh,
I
yeah.
mean, you would have that power even if it wasn't in
Yeah,
Right.
here.
if
Just
you
wanna-
look down.
But if it helps clarify for your members,
Right.
then 100%, yeah.
Of course. Okay, I just wanna make sure, cause I know we talked about that.
Yeah, so 84, lines 84, if the student fails to do so, the GM may request a student leave the classroom.
Right.
You can't prohibit the student from coming to class, but
Right.
you can report to the dean of students office, and then we also included in there, in the case of an emergency, you can
Of
also
course.
contact UPD.
Right.
So,
Okay,
the other thing too is that even if we were to write in here that you could tell them to leave the classroom,
right,
that may be a statement of what you can do, but that doesn't necessarily bind the student to comply because this isn't a
Correct.
contract with the student, so.
right,
I mean, it may be instructive to the GA, but it wouldn't necessarily create a binding. I mean, the student should
Okay.
leave the classroom for different reasons, but not because we say it in the contract.
okay. Okay, and, all right, yeah, I think that's really it.
Okay. All right, so if,
Wait, no, let me just ask,
Yeah.
does anyone else have any comments?
No.
Okay.
could we, if we have time, could we talk about 28 for a second?
Oh,
Sure.
we got plenty of time.
Would you mind bringing up I didn't bring copies of your proposal. Would you mind bringing up your proposal? I had a question of just one sentence that I wasn't sure how you considered the interaction of two sentences together, and I want to make sure that I understand. Because 23, I think we're good on,
Okay,
but we can't be good on 23 until we're good on 28.
sure.
And I think we're close on 28. I'd like to be able to, if we can
Yeah.
get both of those
I
done.
think we're close on
that'd be
all of
good.
it.
Yeah, and
23,
it's like-
24, 25.
Yeah.
28.
It's a numbering thing though, too, because in 23, we specifically referenced 28.
Mhm.
Yeah.
So I don't know what 27 is, but you know what I'm saying? Like, so if we don't agree
Yeah,
to
we gotta make sure
27,
that-
then
Yeah,
it changes.
Oh, well, I mean, I think that's something that, like, when we compile everything, we'll fix, right? I mean, we were just calling these articles.
Right.
Yeah,
Yeah, we just, I need to,
Yeah.
I mean, you
Okay.
can also just include the name of the articles too, just for.
Yeah,
next case.
yeah.
Yeah,
So I guess and take a minute to read it too, because my question is pretty specific.
Okay.
Because this is something that I want to be able to go ahead and talk to my team about, because I think this is this is the last change that you guys did, which is really lines 18 through 23.
Mm-hmm.
So what I want to make sure I understand is how you all see the interaction of what's required by the university in lines 14 and 15 with line 18 and 19. So in other words, here's my question, and I'm not trying to be like arcane about this, but it's important. So 14 requires that the university shall satisfy any collective bargaining obligation with respect to the change prior to implementing it. And then 18 is a specific sort of escape hatch where UFGAU may declare that you want to reopen the relevant articles of the contract and bargain the substance of the change to regulation or policy.
Right.
So to me, those two things are like completely redundant, because if we're saying we have to satisfy our obligation, it's not a legally required change, so it's something discretionary that we put in
Right.
policy.
Right,
That would inherently require us to seek to bargain it with you.
sure.
So I'm guessing what I'm saying is like, we already have to do that, so why would you want to be able to tell us in writing that you want to do that? Because we're already required to. I guess I just want to see, how do you kind of put those together?
Well, actually, the whole point of
Because of
enumerating 1, 2, and 3 specifically is because it's covers all the possible scenarios in
Okay.
that case. And essentially, yes, I mean, it's true, whether we write it or not, we would be bargaining the substance.
Well,
You see
But-
those as, what I'm
but-
saying, there's not a difference. You
No,
don't
I
see
know,
a
I know.
difference, like, it's not meant to.
But I
be-
just wanted to make sure that
That's good.
yeah.
But
Um,
also, Sikander, isn't part of that because that language reflects that we use the word if the university proposes on B. Now I see that you've struck that and switched it back to adopts, which
Mhm.
makes it more redundant. But with the wording as it was when we proposed it, it's not the same.
This is what you guys.
University
this is-
proposing something.
No, wait, Jacob, we accepted adopts.
We did.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, so,
Well, the point still, I mean, I clearly was not up to date on
there's.
that, but
difference.
when it was first stated with proposed being the thing, then there was
Correct.
certainly
Yeah,
no
but
redundancy.
I mean, it's kind of, I mean, that's why we were okay with the adopts because as you said, I mean,
Yeah.
it does mean that you have to bargain it with us.
Right.
And that's why I wrote it specifically that you would have to bargain the
Yes.
substance of it, just so that it's clear.
Yeah.
Right,
oh, yeah.
so let me ask it slightly differently,
Yeah.
because I think I understand and I think I get it.
Mhm.
So, because if 1, 2, and 3 are completely, you're intending for 1, 2, and 3 to be comprehensive, you don't see any. You can't necessarily think of or articulate something in 14 and 15 that isn't covered in 1, 2, 3. I guess that's what, like, is there any
Yes.
additional collective bargaining obligation that isn't then covered in either what's behind doors 1, 2, and 3? Like, is there a box on the
No,
page, so
I
to
don't think
speak?
so.
No.
I think
No,
that
and I
that
think-
covers all the possibilities.
Right, and
Okay.
I think the point is, and where some of the confusion I saw was that the satisfying collective bargaining obligation
Mhm.
would mean like adhering to the contract. So
Right.
so what this proposal is saying that if there is this regulation that is adopted that affects the contract, we can choose to bargain it right now as kind of like an impact bargaining, but it's
Okay.
not, but we're choosing. to
Like a
reopen
mutual
it.
reopener,
Well, a
basically.
mutual reopener.
Right,
But if we don't wanna do that, the other option is we can decline to bargain, or to change the regulation or policy until the contract is
yeah, you're like,
reopened.
we don't wanna talk
naturally.
about this till next time.
And then number 3 is the bargain over to change, allowing its implementation, so we're like, we're good with this
Go ahead,
policy,
yeah.
yes. So the point is that if, in the case of 2, would be that you still have to satisfy the collective bargaining obligation of the current contract, and
Right.
we can't, and that policy won't affect us until we bargain in. and
Okay,
That's
I think
where,
I see
that's
what
where
you're
it's coming
saying
from.
now.
So,
Okay.
so
I
the
see what
collect,
you're
so
saying.
satisfying a collective bargaining obligation would either be bargaining with us if we agree to that, the mutual like reopener, or satisfying our current contract language until the next
got
contract
it.
cycle.
Yeah, cause it's basically
Yeah.
the options are, okay, we'll agree to talk about it now.
Mm,
We're not talking about it now and you can't do anything,
Right,
or we don't wanna talk about it now, but go ahead.
correct.
Basic, I mean, it's
Yes,
sort of.
yeah,
vernacular.
that pretty much sums it.
Okay. And again, but 1, 2, and 3, I just wanna make sure that we don't have a difference of opinion in terms of like, there's some other category besides 1, 2, and 3, like those are really the only
No,
ways.
I
That
to
was
proceed.
supposed to be,
That's
a
comprehensive, yeah, I don't think there's,
Okay.
I mean, I can't
I
think
get
of any other like anything else we could really do.
No, that's good.
Yeah,
That helps me, again,
Yeah.
that provides me with the clarity that I need to be able to, so we can go back
Right.
and talk about it. Cause again, like I said, I think we'd like to wrap up this one and the other ones, cause they're all kind of hanging together. Even if we don't sign them, because we want to see what other stuff is gonna happen, that's fine. But
Right.
At least if we don't have to come back and like hammer these out.
right,
And we can say, okay, these are,
Yeah.
for all intents and purposes, they're kind of finished.
yeah,
So-
yeah, and
Okay. All right. Did you guys have any today or no?
No,
Okay.
that would be it.
All right. So give mine next week.
next week,
I'm in
no,
Texas.
yeah.
Yeah.
no,
Okay.
All right,
And we'll see you the following, so a week
Following,
from,
yeah.
a week, so 2 weeks from today.
Mhm.
all right,
All right.
sounds good.
25th.
Yes.
Good luck to your son in Texas. I hope
That's-
it's a lot of fun.
I hope-
You have a lot of
I
fun
hope,
too.
man, he has been driving down, so we live about an hour from Naples.
Mhm.
He's been driving down every day after he's been cutting practice.
Wow.
His coach let him get out of practice because he's in track and field.
Oh, wow.
To go down there and work with, there's another team from Florida who's also going, because they kind of.
Yeah. Oh, what, do you know the team? Do you know the team name?
It's
Okay.
Java the